Welcome to In Conversation with MANWAR podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Do Not Be a Bystander campaign. You can join us in raising awareness about bullying by visiting the donotbeabystander.com, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay informed about upcoming episodes. Today's participants are Nyla and Arifa. Our special guest for today's episode is Gary Simpson.
Welcome to our Bullying Awareness Podcast. I'm your host, MANWAR Khan. Today, I'm joined by two young individuals who are ready to share their thoughts and insights on the topic of bystander. Bystanders can be present in various situations, including conflicts, bullying, harassment, and emergencies. Their role as observers gives them a unique opportunity or position to influence the outcome of the situation, whether positively or negatively. Our participants will be talking about this topic here today, bystander, and these young individuals are very passionate about addressing this issue. I would like to introduce Arifa and Naila, our today's participants. Thank you for joining today's podcast, Arifa and Naila.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Before we continue, I would like to introduce our special guest today's podcast, Gary. Gary will shed some lights on the topic of bystander and some tips and advice to the viewers and our participants. Thank you, Gary, for taking your time to join this podcast. I would like to talk a little bit about Gary. Gary Simpson is a minister and a semi-retired teacher counselor. He is an activist and a volunteer with Stop Hate 2000, a group that works to reduce prejudice, discrimination, bullying, and hate. Thank you, Gary, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now that we have introduced our participant, let's get started with our questions. Understanding the concept of bystander and their role in various situations is essential for promoting a sense of responsibility and fostering a safer environment. So my first question is for Arifa is what do you mean by bystander? And what is the role of a bystander in a situation?
A bystander does not necessarily involved in a situation where someone else requires help, and in this way is understood as a passive observer and onlooker who watches something happening but stays on the sidelines and doesn't intervene or get help even if someone needs it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, that's a straightforward answer for bystander, like who is watching, and bystander can be passive and active, right? Different types of bystanders, but generally bystanders is the things or the incident is happening in front of them, and they are the observers. So that is a definition of bystanders. You're right. Excellent. Thank you so much. So when witnessing as you're welcome. When witnessing a situation that requires intervention, bystanders may face various barriers and delay their ability to take actions. I have seen it in many cases. So my question for Naila is, what are some common barriers that prevent bystanders from intervening?
Several common barriers can prevent a bystander from intervening in bullying situation. First of all, fear of retaliation. A bystander may fear becoming targets themselves if they intervene in a situation. They may worry about becoming the next victim or facing physical, social, or emotional consequences. They may be uncertain about the seriousness of the situation, and the most common characteristic of a bystander is they may feel that someone else will intervene or assume that the others are much more capable to handle the situation. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Most of the time, it is they don't intervene just because they think that it might not safe, and that's why we never. I am as an activist on this. I always encourage people not to be bystander, but at the same time, I also focus on that. You have to make sure that you are in a safe position first before you intervene. That comes first. If it is not safe, group of people, 10 people bullying one person, and you are there alone, you do not go and jump in to help that person. In that case, you need to go and try to mobilize people or get someone from help to get the help. That's one of the reasons we have started this campaign. Do not be a bystander. Is when you see something like this, you do not want to walk away from there, right? You take a stand or get a help. You try to help. If you cannot help, you know that it's not safe for you. You go and try to get help for that person. You just do not walk away and say that this is not my business. That's not what we want. So, all right, excellent. Thank you so much, Nala. My next question for you is, uh, what are the risks of or dangers faced by bystanders who intervene?
Thank you for the questions. Bystanders who intervene may face social consequences such as being rejected, excluded, or labeled negatively by their peers or the larger social group. Then comes the lack of support. Other bystanders in the vicinity may choose not to get involved or provide support to the intervening individual. The lack of support the lack of support can leave the bystander feeling isolated or overwhelmed. Thank you. That would be it.
Right. Thank you. Arifa and Nala, do you have anything else to add on this topic?
No,
Right. If not, we have come to the end of our podcast. Now I would like to invite our guest, Gary, to shed some lights on this topic, your comments, your advice, and tips.
Oh, I think this is probably one of the most difficult areas of bullying. What can a bystander do and feel safe? And it's not, if you're a bystander, it may be impossible to run and get a parent easily. Maybe if it is possible to get a parent or an adult to help out with that, that's certainly desirable and very helpful. What I have done a few times, and I've seen other people do it, is I have taken out my cell phone, which has a video capacity, and I zoom in then on what's going on and record it. And you can upload that directly to the internet, so it doesn't stay on your phone. And the advantage with that is it's not, if your phone is too small to be able to handle all the storage, you've got a place where it's going automatically. So I have done that. I know others have done that. In fact, this weekend there was Friday night, there was some stuff going on that would have fit the category of theft, and I did intervene to try and help make sure the person's belongings weren't stolen. I'm a bit crippled up, so it probably wasn't a very good thing for me to do. We were able to get back to what was taken, and there were people who were watching, who were videoing what went down. So if the police needed to be involved, they could have kind of a running idea of what took place, because we got a video of quite a bit of the action. And it fortunately didn't come to violence. I thought there was going to be violence, not from me, but two people were in confrontation with each other. I thought that might turn violent. It didn't. It's difficult sometimes to know what you can do and be safe. So it's hard for me to be critical of a person who is afraid to step forward and to say anything. Sometimes just leaving sets a tone and a message. Even if you leave and call the police or call an adult, trusted adult to come and then join back slightly later, but leaving means there's no audience. And sometimes bullies are performing for an audience. So there's no audience, there may be less of a reason to be involved. But getting some kind of documentation on it, and there are times you can document without people even knowing that you've got your cell phone on. I remember being in San Francisco Bay Area, not sure where to go. Rather than pull out a map and look, which identifies you as a tourist, it could mean you're more at risk. I do like everybody else is. I've got my cell phone, but I've got it set on maps. So all I have to do is glance and see where I'm at, make sure I'm still going in the right direction. Just glance like that, put it back against my chest. Everybody thinks I've got it on the phone or something. Nobody was really cluing into the fact that I actually was a visitor in that area and was needing to figure out where to go. So sometimes there are ways of doing things that are very low key, so people don't realize what you're doing. But the predominant thing is you need to be safe. We need to see if we can get the person that's being bullied safe as soon as possible. And sometimes just saying something as much as I don't feel comfortable with what's happening can make a difference. Because in some, even that's not an insult. It's just I don't feel comfortable with what's taking place. Does kind of send a message that maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Maybe the people who are watching could either leave or become involved in doing something.
Yeah. Or I just want to add one more thing here, Gary, is sometimes if you say that word that, yeah, what you are doing is not right, something like that. Those messages are powerful, trust me. I mean, if somebody says that, but again, you have to make sure that you're in a safer position to say that. Anything else, Gary?
That's all I can think of right at the moment, but I will mention something just in case a person who has religious standing, I mean, in terms of a community, is present. If you happen to be wearing a clerical collar, which would be a Christian thing only, or something that designates your clergy, sometimes if you see something going on and you say this is wrong, it needs to stop, that carries a lot more weight. I don't typically wear a clerical collar, so it's not like I can easily do that. But if a person does have something that shows they have a bit of authority on a moral level or some other level, that can make a difference.
Agree, totally. Excellent. Thank you so much, Gary. Naila, Arifa, do you have any questions for Gary?
No.
All right, we have come to the end of our podcast. As I mentioned, thank you so much, our participants, and thank you, Gary, for joining us today. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Before we wrap up, I would like to remind our listeners that there are several resources available to help individuals dealing with bullying. The Government of Alberta has a bullying helpline which provides support and advice to those experiencing bullying, and that helpline can be reached at 1-888-456-2323. Bullying is a violation of human rights. Under no circumstances is bullying acceptable. As a community, we have our shared responsibility to take a stand against bullying and refuse a bystander. Thank you so much again for joining in conversation with Manwar Khan, and we will see you next week. Bye.